when thinking of the bitter memories of the Khmer Rough genocide regime. It reminds me of maltreatment, physically and emotionally, against my parents and against me. The Khmer Rough brutally massacred people in Tuol Sleng. When I came to this place, it makes me remember the bitter history, a lot about my family, especially in the genocide regime of the Khmer Rough. That was, my family life was so bitter. I remember one day when I went to feed the cows. In that evening, the cows got lost. Then I started looking for a cow. At that time, all of my friends left the field and went back home. I still lost my cow but kept looking, and I asked all my friends. They told me that my cow walked into Tuol Sleng. When I went into Tuol Sleng, I was very worried because this hill was a restricted area, the hill of security guards who banned everyone to enter. At that time, I despaired of what to do. Firstly, if the cow got lost, the child leader would arrest me for re-education and criticism. But if I went in, I would face danger as the security forces would arrest me or kill me there by accusing me of being an enemy or a spy. But I could not avoid. So I took adventure by opening wire fence to get in. While I was looking for my cow, my eyes looked around and everywhere, and I did not see the cow. But instead, I heard the sound of digging. Kub, kub, kub. I turned my eyes to the sound of digging. Then I saw 3 gorillas digging a hole, about 4 meters squares and 1 meter deep. Then I looked for a place to hide and kept watching their activities. Then I saw a leader wearing a cap, a scarf, and a pistol around his waist. I thought he would be the boss. The boss arrived and asked comrades how many cows could be filled into pit. Then the 3 gorillas who were digging the pit replied that it could probably hold 18 or 20 heads, my comrades. So I know quite well that that was the killing hole. I no longer felt to look for a cow, so I came back, but unexpectedly, the cow was near me. I thought that the cow had intention or spirit that brought me to see the killing pit for my family. All of these became a cause to make me not to forget a place where I lived here. I walked the cow home desperately. Soon arriving home and not yet tied a cow, my mother told me that, "Son, please pack all materials and go to stay in the Tuol with me, as the organization told us to go there." Then I shouted at them, "Parents, please do not go. They will kill you." As I saw them digging a pit, I brought all scenes to tell my parents. Then they had nothing to say to his son as they knew everything. And they required me and my twin brothers to go with them and kept my elder sister and younger brother to stay with my grandmother. They demanded me to go with them because he thought that no matter of what day it was, the leader of children always caught me for re-education and criticism for mistakes I made, especially for those of the April 7th newcomers. Became the target for being destroyed and being watched. Soon my mother was informed that my family had to move to Tuol Sleng. Then my mother went out and looked for the group chief, as she was told that if she had gold, such as golden rings, necklace, and watches, then brought them and gave them to the main group chief, then they might change our names to another family instead. After, she went twice and did not meet the chief. She became desperate and finally they still followed and called my family to stay in Tuol Sleng. Turning back to the life of my father, about his sorrow as I wrote in this book. And in this picture, I wrote that my father's sorrows, describing how to find a way out of Tuol Sleng and out of accusation of being betrayed to the organization. As a teacher betrayed the organization, or as an enemy. Then he decided to commit suicide while he was feeding the buffaloes. As in the book I wrote, I interviewed one of his students, and his name is Uncle Saren. Uncle Saren described all stories he knew to me, and he said, "The teacher, my father, wanted to kill himself by suicide at that time because he saw the pants made robes in the bag. And my father told Uncle Saren that, man, I would commit suicide. Because if I do not commit suicide, my family will be definitely killed. So there is only way for me to commit suicide by hanging my neck. Then, the accusation from organization would no longer exist because I died. So my family would be freed from being executed." So he did have extensive thinking. He thought that the law under the Khmer Rough regime would really exist. He thought that they would not accuse everybody, but accused only one. But it was not like that. They imposed accusation on the family as a whole, even though he committed suicide, because he was a Buddhist monk. As a Buddhist monkhood, he knew well that suicide is really a sin in Buddhist religion. ANS God would not help. So he thought again, by finding another way. Then he decided not to commit suicide. For a sin made through suicide, God would not help. So he decided to let his fate go on its way, until finally, he could not escape. So at the end he decided to go to Tulslang by bring his children to go along. The next morning he packed materials. I saw him packing materials here in this place. My grandparents were sitting on the bed. My parents were sitting on the floor, and I was sleeping in this hammock. My younger twin brothers were crying, and my mother was putting on her new dresses. I knew that my mother really knew quite well that she and her children would have been killed. She changed with new dresses, provided by the organization that she had never dressed them. She had my younger twin brothers put on new dresses. I knew about her feelings. She was feeling so shocked. My elder sister was sitting next to this pillar, and she said goodbye to the mother, while my parents sat down and prayed to receive Buddha Dharma from my grandparents. Then they said to my grandparents with 3 words, "I goodbye." At that moment, my mother pulled out a basket and put it on her head, whereas my father carried clothes and scarves. And they walked out, and I suddenly ran to grab the leg of my father and said, "Please don't go, don't go. If you go, they will kill you," because I saw them digging the pit already there.
On July 22, 1978, when they brought my parents, the organization called them to live in Tulslang. Finally, they said goodbye to their parents, my grandparents. They sat here, and I also sat near them. They told that they went at this time, and they were seen back home in the evening. Then they survive, but they were seen returned. They did die, and children did not need to wait for them. This was what they said. So I said, "If mother go, may I go with you too?" She replied that, "Daughter, don't go. Please stay here to take care of your younger brothers." Firstly, she planned to leave only 2 children here. It was me and one of my younger brother. His name was Samith, or called as Ava. Then my younger brother, Mr. Long Vongsamith, or called as Vong, said, "Father, I would not go because that place has big pits. If going there, it was fear of being killed." Then my father discussed with my mother and said, "My dear, be sympathetic to a son. If he is fearful of being killed, don't ask him to go. Let him stay here too." Then they left behind 3 children. I said, "If they bring mother and father for being killed, I want to go too, as I could not live without my parents." And my mother implored me to stay here and to take care of younger brothers, so that the family would survive and continue to live. So I agreed to stay. Then she told her cousin, a brother-in-law, and a son-in-law of my mother's elder brother, who is living in the yacht, a nearby village, to meet her. Then my mother asked me to bring a piece of paper and a pencil to write down and to keep. So I wrote how many weights of bracelets, necklaces, and types of diamonds. She asked me to write them down for remembrance. Then she packed all items, such as gold and diamonds, and gave them to my elder cousin-in-law, Mrs. Sim, living in the yacht village. She asked Mrs. Sim also to keep those with Brother Hong, and said when a country got peace, just return them to my children. Then mother told me when a country became peaceful, you could take the items back from Uncle Hong. And said, you should give your earrings, weight of 3 huns, golden earrings, to the daughter of Mrs. Lei Huan, because they had only a daughter. She asked me to give earrings to her and to get back the items. Then they walked out and said goodbye to their parents, my grandparents. They all sat together and said goodbye. Then I said to my mother that, Mother, soon you arrive there, please told them that you have older parents. She replied that, I really request them, but if they accept or not, I will not know. But I could request them back. I would surely return in this evening. But if you do not see me this evening, don't hope your parents survive. We would surely die. Don't wait for me, and take care of your younger brothers. When my parents was about to leave, and I gave a scarf to my father, and it was a white and blue scarf, and on the edge of the scarf was carved with the name of Chinda. I gave it to him and said, before you leave, Father, please take this scarf. So approximately 3 or 4 days later, I saw my scarf being with another person. She was living next to me, and she was a descendant of Mrs. Jem. I saw her wearing a scarf around her neck. At that time, I was threshing rice around the same place. I was asked to thresh rice along with others. The rice punching mortars were there and under my house. There were rice punching mortar and rice stalks on my house as they kept for the collective use. During that Pol Pot regime, when I was punching rice, the others said to Ms. Ka that your scarf is so nice. Then they pulled out and opened the scarf. They all watched the scarf, as such a new scarf was seldom available. I did not remember who gave it to me, as it was with small white and blue squares. So they opened a scarf and looked around. Then it was surprising that they saw a scarf being embroidered with letters. They said this scarf was embroidered. They kept looking at the letters and said, look like French letters. We cannot read them. They talked to each other. Then I brought it for a look. I said, this scarf is embroidered with my name on it. So soon I said this, I was feeling fearful, feared of being watched. After said so, I did not say any longer. If I keep talking about it, I was afraid they would know about my parents. And Miss Ka also did not dare to say anything. She kept quiet. I was so scared and not talking anymore, but kept it in mind. When I arrived home, I told my grandmother that my mother would have been killed because I saw a scarf. The scarf is wearing on the neck. There were Miss Ka, Miss Khan, and some others. I do not remember their names all. They were assigned as model children. They were asked to guard that hill. Those children were assigned to watch the road to that hill, and kept watching and to ban anyone to enter the hill, as they were afraid that someone would know about that hill. These children might probably guarded that road. I didn't know if my father gave to her, or when my father was brought for being killed, and that child found a scarf. According to my thought, I suspected, but I did not ask her as of today. I wanted to meet that lady and asked about how she got a scarf, but I have not dared to ask.
More than 40 years ago, in the genocide regime, there was a shelter here to accommodate people whom the organization ordered to stay on this hill, and the shelter was made of bamboo and leaves of palm trees. At that time, my parents and twin younger brothers were also staying here, as we know when my brother ran from Tultapana, crossing this area, and met my mother in this shelter here. Soon my mother knew that she would be killed. Then she pushed the head of my brother back to the village and said, "Son, go back home. Your elder brothers and grandparents are waiting for you at home in the village." At that time, my brother sneaked out. My mother told him that, "Son, when you go out, you must be careful. If the guerrillas find you, then they will kill you."
My mother rushed to get out and hugged me and pulled me away from other families, and whispered to me that, son, please go back, as mother asked them, for you to stay with your grandmother. Please do not stay, please go back. And I went back. On another road that was through a quiet canal, where I could disguise myself with the cow guards. Suddenly, my twin younger brothers ran after me, and my mother pulled my brothers back and said, "Don't go, just let your elder brother go." And then I walked back home, alone. Arriving home, I did not know when, as I could not remember at all. And the next morning, I lost my mother. I did not expect I survived. But my mother gave life to me. If she did not push me back, then I would be killed with her that night. The second day, I went to the restricted hill. I did not meet any Khmer Rough soldiers. That was the time I could survive.
And my father continuously said, if I was killed, you should not take revenge, because it would be my past karma. So, please let it be ended with me, and if you take revenge, then the karma would be passed on to the next generation endlessly. So his last words before his death were made on July 22nd, 1978. Therefore, the story that I would never forget in my life was the digging of the pit that I saw with my own eyes. If I did not see that pit digging, probably I would go with them without bargaining. And at that time, my life would not exist either. My life was over by that time. Soon they have been gone. I became an orphan, living with my elder sister, my younger brother, and my grandparents. Maltreatments against me was countless. For example, they punished me by having me to guard the cows in the winter, do not allow me to go anywhere, without having a shirt, but countwines and poles used as covers on my body, because they accused me of the organizational disciplinary. They accused me of climbing the tree and sung feudalist songs. They said, we are revolutionary children at this era. We must not sign feudalist songs, but instead to build ourselves as true revolutionary children. Soon they re-educated me. They warned me not to commit the second time and imposed the no-meal disciplinary action on me. In the evening when I returned, I went to the rice cooking place. I opened the pot and no rice was left as people who came earlier ate them all. So I turned to the kitchen. There, I found the left crispy rice soaked in water. I was so happy that I'd have rice to eat. I used my hand to pick a piece of rice and put it in my mouth. I was about to chew it. The kitchen chef came behind and said, "Child, the April 17th child newcomer, why do you steal the rice? Do you know that the rice is kept for pigs?" Here they wanted to say that pigs were more worthy than human life. Then they used a spatula to hit my head, leaving scars as of today. The spatula in that era was made from the steel hoe, which was burned and pounded into a spatula, and it was weighed heavily. They broke my head, causing bleeding. Then I felt pitiful to myself and upset with my fate. Why did they kill my parents and also maltreated me? I returned home with tears. At night, they called me for criticism. My grandparents called my grandchild. The female comrade chief called you for criticism. Did you do anything wrong? At that time, they woke me up and I saw the female chief. I felt shocked and thought I would be killed, as my grandparents told me that a child chief need you for re-education and criticism. In the middle of the night, I just slept for a short time. The sky was so dark and could not see anything except fireflies flying up and down. They seemed more free than human beings. At that time, my grandma dragged my hand. She said, "My grandson, You are so faithful. They just killed your parents, and now they bring you. You are so faithful." Then she cried. She felt pitiful to her children and also felt pitiful to her grandchild. The family was really encountered crisis, destruction, and tragedy. She embraced me and whispered at me, "Grandson, if they killed you, you should say, Putho, Putho, and pray to your ancestors, teachers, and curators to take care of you." About to end her expression, the female leader snatched my hand to walk away. On the road, they ordered to turn left. Then they ordered to sit and wait. There, I dragged a trunk, sitting on it and thinking that I would be killed there as I was told about their killing. I knew. Every time I fed the cows, I always listened to the old men's talking. Every time I listened, I felt fearful and shocked. So they ordered to wait there. I was waiting there, and soon there was another chief. I did not know him. He asked me if I was Comrade Vong. I answered yes. He ordered to walk ahead to the bamboo plantation as the organization was waiting there. I thought that just a child like me. Why they took a turn to walk me for re-education and criticism? I seemed I was an enemy, destroying the organization in such a thing? I thought it was so ridiculous. Until now, I still think everything in such a regime is really cruel. While they were walking me, I saw the chief. Same as the picture I draw. Handed a rope to the female chief to tie my both hands on my back. Soon they tied me up. They brought a bamboo stump and put it on the table, and nearby was a bicycle. It was the organization, their organizational cadre. And with my hands tied, they questioned me. I saw he was grabbing a bamboo trunk. I bowed my head and thought I was killed here. But he hit the table with a bamboo trunk. Bang. I remembered words of my grandparents. To memorize the words, Putho, Putho, I repeated words 3 times. Then the man said, "Do you know? This period of time is the revolutionary era. You must not sing and dance happily. You must correct yourself to become a real revolutionary child. This is the first time, and the organization does not punish you. But if there is the second time, the organization will bring you for re-education and criticism. For re-education at the upper level means killing. But they used such a word to replace the word killing. Then I was ordered to come back. Walking 2 steps away, he ordered the female chief to untie me and told her to take a rope back for the future use. After untying me, he told a female chief that, "You must work hard so that you become a revolutionary woman." I think that the cruel treatments they made in that era came from the persons they honored during that time. I know that. So when I arrived home, and they also came behind me and they told the female comrade, "You must punish this child for the mistake he made by tomorrow." They walked me to the front of my house, ordered me to enter the house, and said, "You must wake early in the morning, sweep and collect cow poops from 5 cow shelters and keep them in the same pit. And bring the cows to the pond of Tatith in the western village and must not come home as the organization deprive of your food a day." I agreed to everything so that I could survive. So, all problems that happened at that time made me really so regretful, with remorse that happened to my family. What I wrote about this story, well, made me remember of the bitter past of my family that used to have experienced throughout the Khmer Rough regime when they maltreated us physically and mentally, the waves and storms of life that fell on my family as well as other families and villagers in my village. At the same time, I had written this book to dedicate to their soul, to my parents, brothers and sisters, who were brutally massacred by the Khmer Rough in Tul Slang. It was a scene at the nighttime when my parents had not been brought death. I wrote that, the gorilla king of the hell. I wrote these in my book. I wrote one gorilla, one king of the hell. It means when they came to detect us, that gorilla always stood by that pillar. While my parents whispered at each other, they also looked down. When they saw a person under the house, my parents whispered and raised a hand to inform each other. There was a person under the house. I watched through and saw the person in black dresses. I was shocked. By see this, the following days I dared not to look through as I was scared of the black-dressed person This is a picture of the chief of the main committee, accompanied by the village chief and the village guerrillas, came and told my father, my parents to move to Tulslang. Soon my parents knew about this and about moving to death. My parents were also told go and meet the chief of the main committee. If my parents had a watch and a necklace, just brought and gave those items to the chief, then he might replace our names with names of others. This is a picture of my mother who was holding precious items, such as gold and wrist laces that she saved from my father who was a teacher. She wrapped them and was going to give to the main committee chief, but she could not meet. She was hopeless soon after she went twice. I saw this in my own eyes. When she could not meet, she finally decided to meet the mother-in-law of her daughter. I wrote here, the marriage song of the revolutionary matchers, marriage under the roof of the revolutionary matchers, under the organization. Here she met the mother-in-law of her daughter, Mrs. Tim, and she told her that, Mrs. Tim, if I am killed, please organize the marriage ceremony of our children. At that time, she matched my elder sister. If the organization organized a marriage ceremony, they liked them to get married with each other. After that, on the wedding day, they told me, they said, a child comrade, why don't you go to the wedding of your elder sister? Then I ran across the rice field and saw my elder sister. I saw my elder sister getting married and making a pledge. My elder sister looked at me with tears. After wedding pledge, they organized a dinner party. That dinner party was being served with porridge and the smelly fermented fishes as I looked from the distance. That was what a solemn wedding party under the Khmer Rough regime. And at that time, I was standing and watching from the distance where the cadres were chasing the children like me away. They said, go out, the April 17th child. What are you looking for? Go away, a newcomer. Under that regime, they terribly committed discrimination against the April 17th people. Even though I and my young brother, while we were feeding the cows, they never let us get together. They separated us. One new childcomer was to be associated with 3 or 4 local children. Newcomers could not be allowed to stay together. Once in a while, we met once with an elder sister, a younger brother in the rice field, but we were watched and shouted at us that a Phnom Penh person, a stupid newcomer and so on. They really looked down at us, did discrimination. Local persons against newcomers. In fact, soon we arrived earlier. There was non-discrimination. All children liked and treated each other as villagers in one village. But later, the Khmer Rough cadres transformed children with the ideology. They trained those children to discriminate newcomers, to censor newcomers, because they said newcomers were feudalist persons, not to associate with them. So, this problem, later on, the time was approximately from the time he died on the 1 year of his death anniversary, from July 22, 1978 to July 22, 1979, 1 year of their death anniversary, 1 year anniversary of the death of my parents, elder and younger brothers. At that time I dreamed. The dream in this place, I want to say dream spirits. Dream spirits means I myself dreamed about my parents. Were living in the Western Hill. There was a shelter. They were talking to each other. My father was sitting on the bed. There was a stove and I saw dry fishes. But they were wearing new black dresses. It was strange as to see my mother having curly hair with blood stained on her face, arms and hair, full of dry blood stains and talking to each other about something. So, brought the dreams and told them to my elder sister, and sister said it was correct. When they killed our mother, they threw a grenade to kill her in the pit. And at that time, killing was seen by a palm tree climber. He told us about it. After we asked him about how she was killed, so that her children would know, and wrote a book about it. So, when we asked him, a palm tree climber said, my mother was walked by the Khmer Rough gorilla. They bolted her face. When walking my mother to the rim of the pit, the gorilla ordered my mother to kneel down. They were preparing to tie her hands against her back because they knew that my mother had enough strength to counterattack. Probably it came to an end of her life. She had beared so many sufferings for long. So, at that time she had to counterattack, although how they would kill her at last. When she bowed her head, she dragged one gorilla armed with a rifle with her, dragged into the pit. When fell down into the pit, another gorilla killer saw and ran away to the shelter to inform one of their leaders. This is an image we drew in the dream, and based on the climber's elaboration, she dragged one gorilla with her. The another gorilla had no idea on what to do. So, he did nothing, but ran to the shelter and informed his leader that a female comrade we walked for killing dragged one comrade into the pit. Then, his leader ran along with that guerrilla. There were 2 grenades around his waist. Soon arriving, he looked into the pit. Then he walked back about 2 meters from the pit, and he threw 1 grenade into the pit. Throwing the first grenade, they heard voice, "Oi." It was sound of a woman, heard by a palm tree climber. And he recognized her as my mother because he knew her. When hearing, "Oi, oi," then the 2 guerrillas looked into the pit and pulled the second grenade and threw it into the pit. The explosion shook the hill and chased birds to fly and surprising around, and the voices, "Oi," disappeared. So, it means that my mother at that time could not hold her anger and thought if she died, they would die together. So, with other scenes he had seen included children whom they mostly were killed with bayonets or smashed their heads against the palm trees. Whereas my father, they might probably brought to death in another place, kill with a palm tree knife. They killed by different means. This is the story that I had seen, and this image is about when a country was liberated. After the Liberation Day, I went to the hill. When arriving there, I saw people digging the pits to find gold, golden rings, and precious items. I saw skeletons scattered around. I did not know who dug the pits for gold. This is the problem, and I wrote that. Waiting corpses, as I thought that those skeletons could be skeletons of my parents. These are some stories I wrote in my book. This is the time when at this end, I wrote that conscription for the last killing. Conscription for the last killing means that most people in my commune were conscripted except few villages, was carried out in Orang. No one knew how they were killed. And finally, there were seen the liberated army. The Vietnamese army entered. So, I ran separately same as others, and some were shot down on the road. We ran across the battlefield separately. Well, this the story. In this picture, it showed how they walked people to the killing place. The elaboration of a palm tree climber and others could be same as others saw them. And I also knew about those sufferings. Especially, the ethnic minority of Cham was conscripted from Sor Burk Chan. Thousands of them were killed. So, on that hill, based on the Documentation Center of Cambodia, more than 15,000 people were killed. There were more than 83 pits, and there were 3 large wells. Whatsoever I elaborated from the beginning to this end was about the life of my family and about our continuous living as orphanage. We have been living with our 3 brothers and sister. We have been struggling to live so hard. It was the struggling, like a steel lifestyle. It means hard efforts. We became orphanage, but now their children who have been surviving are being grown up, become knowledgeable, and all 3 of us have to work hard. We do whatever to dedicate to the souls of the parents who had protected life of their children for survival as of today. So we have nothing to do besides we regularly commit good deeds and donate things in order to dedicate all goodness to them. In addition, children, as their 3 children who left behind and come from their blood, have been struggling to write a book as the heritage, the historic document for the family, and keep it for the next generation to know that our grandparents, ancestors, were really so mentally painful until they died in tool slawing.
Until now, it was that. I remember the bitter history of my parents who left me behind, and along with 2 of my younger brothers to this day. It is because my mother and father who requested me that I would have to stay to take care of the 2 younger brothers to continue to live. And if I and all brothers went along, then we would die together. And I listened to the words of my mother who told me about it. She told she would request and lure me to stay, so I to take care of the 2 younger brothers. And finally, I agreed to stay. My parents said goodbye to me and their twin children, and they traveled to the hill, the killing place. Later on, I was informed that my elder brother was also killed on that day. Pol Pot brought him for being killed. in the courtyard of Tacham Pagoda. From that day onwards, I and my younger brothers, all three of us became orphans. And since lost my parents, I took all efforts to take care of my younger brothers, and we were under my supervision of my grandparents who were very old to take care of us. Without parents to take care of us, we were struggling to cope with everything, with difficulties and hardship, without having food, living with hunger, and there was nothing to eat. The Pol Pot took my parents to kill. And after the liberation days, we still lived in difficulties as we were orphans, and I have worked hard to take care of my younger brothers until we are here today. And I would also thank my younger brother for your working hard to write the book, along with me, and with all three of us, in order that we could make it available as a historic book for the future. In fact, my younger brother Long Vongsamith, who wrote this book with contribution from me, such as telling him some relevant issues, so that my brother would know. These made me feel so good and so happy, because my younger brother was able to compile this book and to produce it as the historic book, in order that the younger generation could learn and know all together.
That place was a historic killing place. I feel that I would like to appeal to people who are living in that village, who have the pits and wells on your lands. Please kindly help leave marks to keep them for, and in the future we could build a memorial hall to pay gratitude to people who were killed in that place, and appeal to local authority to help pay the way, so that we do something to pay respect people whom were killed, the same as we do in Chung Ek, until Sling Princeton and so on. And the stories I have compiled in this book.
Thank you, my younger brother, Long Vongsamith, for all of your hard work, patience, and experiment. You're struggling and resisting to all obstacles, so that you could finish writing a book and make it available. Thank you, my brother, thank you very much. For me, I could not make it, but you have done your best. And resist to all obstacles. Please accept my wishes. As you, an author of a book, you wrote it as a historic book for the family. And keep it for all people all over the country. Wish you be healthy, long life, and be strong. Having good luck, long life, and at all times have a good luck every time.
Killing Hill is a hill that the author has given a nickname to it. The actual location is in Prey province. The people there call it as Tulsline. The book on Killing Hill is a true story that reveal author's will. It is a historic story describing the cries and souls, along with sufferings of the victims who lost more than tens of thousands of their lives, emerging from pits and wells, crossing the waves and storms of lives that turned into tragedy of so many Khmer families who swam across the field of the numerous deaths, were innocent people who had been tortured, separated and isolated to death in Tulsline. The book emerges from the wonderful handwriting of an orphan survivor from the whole family life hunting during the Khmer Rough genocide regime, and it is Mr. Long Vongsamith